Hello, welcome to the Virginia Water and Wastewater Survey and Dashboard webinar presented by Draper, Aden Associates and the Environmental Finance Center at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. I'm Lexi Kay, the Marketing and Outreach Coordinator here at the EFC. This webinar is an outgrowth of the annual survey, now in its 25th year, of Virginia drinking water and wastewater utilities conducted by Draper, Aden Associates and the online interactive dashboard tool developed from the survey data by the EFC. This webinar is also an outgrowth of the ongoing Smart Management for Small Water Systems project funded through a grant from the United States Environmental Protection Agency. On the webinar with us today is David Tucker, Project Director here at the Environmental Finance Center, and Sheryl Stevens, Senior Community Resource Specialist from Draper, Aden Associates. We also have Kathy Hanks, the Marketing Coordinator from Draper, Aden Associates. We currently have 59 people pre-registered for this webinar, so almost half of you have already joined us. And this webinar will last for 1 hour, and we'll have some time for questions both during and at the end of the webinar. Once the webinar ends, you will automatically be emailed a link to a very brief 5 to 10 minute survey. Your feedback is extremely important to us as we'll use it to help us improve future webinars. Thank you very much in advance for filling out our survey. And I have just a few more technical details before we get started. All participants will be muted, so if you have any questions, please type them into the questions box on your screen. Hopefully you had a chance to look over this logistics slide explaining some of the details about using GoToWebinar. But if at any point you have any technical questions, please type them in the question box and we'll do our best to help you. The questions box is fairly small, so if you want to detach the box and make it larger, you can do so by clicking on the curvy arrow in the upper right-hand corner of the box. The raise your hand function of the GoToWebinar will be disabled for this webinar. Again, please type your questions in the questions box. When asking a question, we would appreciate it if you state your name and your water system name. This will help us to respond to you. We may not have time to answer all questions. If not, I will select out a subset to put forth to Sheryl, Kathy, and David to answer. We will follow up with any unanswered questions in the coming days. And finally, this webinar is being recorded, and we will share the slides from the presentation and the recording with you within the next week. With that, we'll get started. So this webinar is being co-hosted by Draper, Aden Associates. Draper, Aden Associates provides engineering, environmental, and surveying services throughout Virginia and the Southeast. Hopefully you're all familiar with Draper, Aden through the survey that they conduct each year. And Sheryl's going to spend some time in a few minutes talking about the survey and its results. David and I work with the Environmental Finance Center at UNC. The EFC is an applied research center that helps governmental and non-governmental organizations figure out how to pay for environmental services. We help our partners by improving access to and understanding of funding sources, improving understanding of what things cost and how they are paid for, and improving financial management. Water and wastewater is a huge portion of our work, and we offer a lot of training opportunities and resources to address some of the biggest issues that water utilities deal with. David will be talking about our Virginia rates dashboard, and he'll go through some actual example utilities. If you'd like to volunteer to be one of the utilities that David looks at, please type your name and utility name into the questions box. The Environmental Finance Center is part of a network of 10 environmental finance centers, or the EFC Network, who are working on the Smart Management for Small Water Systems grant. This is focused on helping small water systems serving fewer than 10,000 people in all 50 states and all 5 territories. The EFCN provides training and resources across all of the areas listed here, and this webinar is part of our fiscal planning and rate setting focus. You're welcome to contact the EFCN through the link here for free one-on-one assistance available through the EFCN website on any of the topics listed on this slide. One of the EFCN staff members will follow up with you via email or phone to address your request. So we'd like to start off with a little lighthearted reminder of something that we all know and appreciate, and that's the fact that everybody needs safe drinking water, every person and every animal. The work that you do, we all know, is very important, so we'd like to help you accomplish your work in the best way that you can. And our more serious objectives here are, we hope that you will become familiar with the features of our Virginia dashboard. We'd hope that you learn how to compare one water system's rates with those of other systems, and we'll show you how to apply several useful financial benchmarks to your system. And we also wanted to just share a map of all the participants who have registered for the webinar today. So we have a really great representation of systems all across the state. And just to get to know you a little bit further, we have a poll question that David's going to bring up now. And so you should be seeing a question come up on your screen, and we'll give you just a few minutes to answer it.
Thanks, Lexi. Yeah, hopefully all of you are seeing the question right now to help us all become more familiar with who's on the call, of what your position or title is at your utility. And I see the responses are rolling in here, which is great. So we'll leave this up for just a few more seconds. Okay, looks like almost everybody has voted now, so I'm going to go ahead and close that and put the results up on the screen. So Lexi, it looks like we have about 1/5 of the group is engineers, which is great. We have some engineers on our staff here at the EFC, and about 2/5 town or county managers or finance directors, and about 2/5 water system managers or operators. No elected officials today, evidently. So that is the result.
Well, thank you, David. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sheryl Stevens from Draper Aden Associates, and she's going to be presenting a lot of great information from their annual water and wastewater report.
Lexi, can you advance the slide? Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about Draper Aden's 25th Annual Water and Wastewater Report. Each year, we mail this survey out to about 268 utilities in Virginia. We've been doing the survey for 25 years. Our intent is to send a survey to every single municipally owned water or wastewater system in the state. In 2013, we received a 57% response rate. Now, in this survey, we ask a series of questions about residential and non-residential use. We ask about user charges, connection fees, and capital recovery charges. And then we compiled the results in a written report that's available to the localities who respond to the survey, and we also put the rate report on our website, so it's really available to anyone who wants to go there and look at it. And then, as Lexi and David mentioned, the Environmental Finance Center compiles the data into the dashboard that David's going to show you in a few minutes. This slide shows you the breakdown of the responses we received this year. We received 153 responses. They were from a really wide variety of utilities, both large and small, from across the Commonwealth. And as you can see, we had 38 authorities, 24 counties, 24 cities, and 67 towns who responded to the survey this year. We have a control group made up of 20 utilities. These utilities have faithfully responded to the survey every year for many, many years. That control group is made up of 7 authorities, 2 cities, 3 counties, and 8 towns. There are some large and some small utilities in our control group. There are both rural and urban localities, and they're scattered across Virginia. This slide shows you the water and wastewater charges on a monthly basis for those utilities that are in our control group. So this is the average charge for 5,000 gallons of water for a month, or 5,000 gallons of sewer for the average of the control group across this time frame from 2003 to 2013. And as you can see, when we compared the results of the control group from 2012 last year to 2013, we saw a 4% increase in water rates and a 4.7% increase in sewer rates. Now, in addition to the control group, of course, we tally up the responses from all of the respondents to the survey. And this table gives you kind of the big picture summary of who responded to the water rate questions. We had in all about 150 utilities who responded to some or all of the water rate questions. That first line shows you an idea of the average number of residential connections of those who responded, the median number, the number of non-residential connections of those respondees, and then the number that most utilities are more interested in is the charge for 5,000 gallons of water over a 1-month period. We found that the average this year was $30.98, with the median being $29.70. Those numbers are right here on that table. We also ask for those communities that have, usually it's an in-town, out-of-town rate or a higher charge outside of their municipal boundaries. We ask for that charge also, and you see here that that was $45.07 was the average charge, with $40.03 being the median. We also ask a question about the charge for water for a non-residential customer who uses 1 million gallons of water in a month. And as you can see, the average charge there was $5,000, $5,394, and $4,907 was the median. This next slide shows you how we disaggregated the responses by system size. And this chart really kind of illustrates something that most of us intuitively believe, which is that the residential rates tend to be higher in the smaller systems. This chart shows that the monthly residential charges for 5,000 gallons of water broken down into the categories of fewer than 5,000 connections, 5,000 to 50,000 connections, and then for any localities that have more than 50,000 connections, what the average residential charge was. Again, this is for 5,000 gallons and on a monthly basis. This table is really similar to what I showed you before on the water rates. Here are the responses from all of our respondents on the wastewater rates. If we jump down to the residential charges, you see that the average is $39.88. The median was $38.50. We show the charges for the outside of the municipal boundaries, and also the charges for 1 million gallons. $6,731 was the average charge, with the median charge being $6,016. And then also, this chart is very similar to what you saw previously for the water rates. We disaggregated the sewer rates into system size, and you can see this blue column, the charge for the average charge for those systems with fewer than 5,000 connections. The reddish is 5,000 to 50,000 connections, and then the green is those systems that have more than 50,000 connections. And this section shows you the outside of the municipal boundaries. And again, this is 5,000 gallons over a monthly period. My next slide changes topics a little bit. So Lexi, I'm thinking if you've received any questions that you'd like to have answered, this might be a good time to do that.
Cheryl, we've got a question. Our participants are wondering if you survey water systems owned by private entities.
We do not, and the reason that we don't is, one, there are many of those systems in Virginia, and we have found in the past that we don't get a very good response rate from those systems. They tend to be smaller, not all, but many are small, and since we don't get many responses from them and it's very hard to verify their responses by checking their rates, we have just decided to concentrate on those utilities that are owned by municipalities.
Thanks, Cheryl. We've got one more question. Do the average charges for 5,000 gallons that you show include utility taxes?
No, we specifically asked the respondents to include all charges on the bill except for the utility tax. And our thought is that that utility tax usually leaves the utility and goes to the general fund, and so we thought we would leave it out of these calculations. And if there are more questions on that, it would be nice. I'll be happy to answer those later.
Okay, great. And just one more question.
Okay.
Does the cost include both volumetric and service-based charges?
Absolutely.
Can you break out just the volumetric charge?
We ask the locality for the total charge. If there's a base charge, we expect them to include that, and then if there's a volume charge, we expect that also. And just so that you know, when we get the responses in, to the extent that this is possible, we go onto the locality's website and look at their rates if they're published there and compare what we see to the answer that the respondent gives us. And if we have questions about whether or not certain charges have been included, for example, we'll occasionally see maybe there's a $2 or $3 billing charge that's a flat fee added to the water bill every month. We want to see that included. We want to see the base charge and the volumetric charge.
Thanks, Cheryl.
You're welcome. Should I go on?
Yes.
Okay. Lexi, I'm having trouble advancing to the next slide. Okay. The next subject that I'm going to talk about is connection fees and capital recovery charges, which are also two things that we ask questions about. In the survey instrument, we define connection fees as the charge for tapping into the water line and running a line to the water meter, or tapping into a sewer line and installing a sewer line to the property line. In contrast to that, we define capital recovery charges as those charges for buying into the existing system, or charges that recognize the cost of adding capacity to the system. And we recognize that different localities use a lot of different words for these two terms or concepts. We also realize that a lot of communities call these capital recovery charges facility fees. We see system development charges fairly frequently, and also the term availability fee. But we're trying to capture any of those types of charges in this segment of the survey where we talk about capital recovery charges. And for this section of the survey, we only ask questions about residential connection fees and capital recovery charges. So the next slide shows the data from 2013 for the connection fees and capital recovery charges for water customers, again, residential. So what this chart is meant to show you is for the smaller systems, the average connection fee was $2,193. The average capital recovery charge was $4,511. And if we look at all the responses for those smaller systems and add the capital recovery charge to the connection fee, the average of the combined fee was $3,339. You can look at this table and see the results for those systems with between 5,000 and 50,000 connections, those systems that have greater than 50,000 connections. And this last group of bars shows the responses from everyone combined. There's a similar slide for wastewater. Lexi, can you advance? There we go. We went through the same process for the wastewater connection and capital recovery charges. Again, what you see here on the far left-hand side of the screen is $3,185 for the connection fee for the smaller systems. That's the average fee for systems with fewer than 5,000 connections, and again, the residential charge. The $5,733 is the capital recovery charge, and then this is the combined charge for all those smaller systems. This grouping of numbers is for those systems between 5,000 and 50,000 connections. This group for over 50,000 connections, and this is a summary of all the responses, with $3,161 being the average connection fee, $5,583 being the average capital recovery charge, and then $5,131 is the combined charge. Lexi, I think this is a good time to stop if you have any questions that are related to the connection fees and capital recovery charges.
We don't have any questions at this point, so you can forge forward.
Okay. Every year when we put out the survey, we ask a series of questions about a topic that we're interested in, that we find that our clients are interested in, or questions that maybe some of our clients or utility friends have said they want more information on. This year we were kind of interested in the topic of residential demands. I think all of you are probably aware that there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that suggests that residential demands are declining in Virginia and really across the country. So in 2013, we decided to include a few questions that were designed to gather some information about changes in residential demands. So the first question that we asked was, what is the average water consumption per month again for your residential customers? And the respondents were given some choices: more than 5,000 gallons, about 5,000 gallons, approximately 4,000, 3,000, less than 3,000 gallons, or don't know. So this table shows you those results. What we saw is that the bulk of the respondents, about 58%, reported that their average residential consumption is 4,000 or 5,000 gallons. And what that means is 4,000 or 5,000 gallons is the average consumption for a household. The next slide shows our question was, have you seen the residential consumption change over the past 10 years? And as you can see, about 38% of those who responded indicated a decrease in residential consumption. And then 37% said it had stayed about the same. The next question that we asked was, do you think that declining demands are a temporary pattern, or are they the new normal? And in this case, we only those who said they had recognized or noticed declining demands answered this question. And of those respondents who answered, 89% said that they thought the declining demands or the lower demands were the new normal. And only 7% reported that they thought it was sort of a temporary phenomenon. So the next slide shows, we asked the question that if you're noticing decreased residential consumption, what are the factors that you think have contributed to that decrease? And we gave the respondents a list of about 9 reasons that they could choose, and they were instructed to choose as many as they thought appropriate. So what you see is that probably the top three answers were low-flow fixtures and more efficient appliances. Almost 70% noted that as one of the reasons that residential consumption has declined. Almost 70% said that they think customers are just very cost-conscious. The economic downturn was the third leading cause for, or reported cause for, declining consumption. And then, as you can see, some of the others that were between 30 and 40% included concerned customers are trying to conserve a resource, changes in outdoor water use patterns, and over 30% of the utilities noted that they had actually taken actions to encourage their customers to reduce water use, and they seem to have achieved some results in that regard. We didn't get too many responses to rainwater harvesting, maybe 13 or 14%. Lexi, I think this is a good time to take a few more questions before you go on to benchmarking rates.
It doesn't look like we have any questions, so with that, we'll go over to David, and he's going to talk about benchmarking rates and the Virginia dashboard.
Thank you, Lexi.
Thanks very much, Sheryl and Lexi, and really great to have a good look at the explanation and the summary of the Draper Aden survey that we've used to make the dashboard. We're going to be showing you the dashboard in just a minute. First, just going to remind any of the systems that are on the call, especially if you're a small system, but any size, not too late for you to type in to your questions box there if you'd like us to put you up on the dashboard later to show you your rate situation. Let's see. Whoops. And the dashboard, as you may know, is an online, free interactive tool. It's posted on Draper Aden's website at this location, and ours here, you just go in and search for it from our top page. And you're welcome to consult it anytime. Now, this is from a website, newsletter from an actual utility who shall remain nameless here. It's a municipal utility where they're taking great pride in how low the cost of their water rates is and their sewer rates. And we can certainly understand that because we're all consumers of water and sewerage services ourselves, or most of us are. However, you can see from this little news release that it's kind of presented in a vacuum there, as if the only primary consideration is, are they the third lowest statewide? And in reality, as I'm sure many, if not all of you on the call know, there's more to consider than that. You know, how affordable relative to what your customers can afford, you know, what percentage of their income is a consideration, or are you covering your costs? Are you setting enough aside for capital reinvestment, and so on? So the slides are being a little slow advancing here. Sorry about that. Another way that this can be done, this kind of benchmarking of rates, would be just to line everyone up side by side here and do an old-fashioned bar graph. And you see the higher charges on the left, the lower charges on the right. That's a step forward compared to the news flash we just saw, but it still doesn't give you information about where you stand in terms of the percentages. Are you in the top quarter, you know, top 5%? Doesn't allow you to look at subgroups of utilities, say by population size of those customers served. So still not really a sufficient benchmarking technique, I think. There we go. And, you know, it's kind of a poor sample selection to do it that way. you're only on that particular graph comparing only one bill amount. You're not looking at anything besides rates. You can get richer information here by putting together a nice gigantic spreadsheet. You know, who knows how many pages this spreadsheet is taken from here. We've done that years ago here at the EFC, but we realized that a more graphical representation is easier for the user to really get their hands around. So there we go. This is 185 pages. Wouldn't you love to go through every page of that? That's probably how you would look if you did. So we're going to actually bring up the dashboard now for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And here we go. We've got an imaginary example utility I'm going to bring up first, and then we're going to bring up volunteers who have kindly put themselves forward. And I should add, too, that we're not asking for volunteers to put anyone on the spot. This is rather an opportunity to get some free explanation or advice from us, and we'll always be happy to do that offline afterwards with people, too. We'll get back to that. So with this dashboard, starting in the upper left-hand corner, first you can decide, do you want to look at just the water bill at 5,000 gallons per month for the residential water, or just the sewer bill, or the combined monthly water and sewer bill. Let's go back to water for just a moment. You can see the dials moving on the right here. This dial in the upper left-hand corner of the dials section is the residential water bill at 5,000 gallons, or sewer, or water and sewer. And this middle dark green section here, this is the middle 50% of the data. And this example, they're just a little bit below the median of $31. So right at the 50% or below, 50% of the folks in the survey data are above point. These lighter greens, those are kind of the shoulder 15%. So taking all of the greens together, you're seeing the middle 80%. And the lowest rates, the yellow is the lowest 10%, and the highest 10% over on the right side. And if you have a question when you're using the dashboard about this dial or any other dial, you can click on the Help button with the question mark there, and a little explanatory window opens up. You can close when you're done. But the survey that Draper Aden has done asks other questions as well, such as industrial water bill at 1 million gallons a month. And the color scheme is the same for the two dials. In the case of this example utility, the dials are both pointing in almost exactly the same direction, so a little below the median in both cases. So it's $4,512 a month here for 1 million gallons of industrial water. In the middle, we have one of the most interesting dials on the dashboard, which is the affordability dial. And affordability is a topic we could have a whole webinar on by itself. There's more than one way to measure or estimate affordability. You can consult the poverty rate, for example, and if you click on the characteristics tab here, you will see for this made-up utility an almost 20% poverty rate, almost twice that of the state of Virginia average. You also see, taken from U.S. Census Bureau statistics, the median household income, or MHI, for this town versus the state of, or the Commonwealth of Virginia average. The characteristics tab also gives aggregate information on how many utilities last raised their rates in a given year. So 76 utilities in Virginia, their most recent rate increase was this year in 2013. Another 41, their most recent increase was in 2012, and so on. So clearly a large percentage of utilities in Virginia raising their rates recently. And the consumption tab is what Sheryl was referring to earlier with the special questions that Draper Aden varies each year in the survey, and presented graphically here were the the size of each box directly corresponds to the number of responses. You can see here environmental concerns, 24. It's a smaller area of this box than the economic downturn, 46 people saying that's contributing to decreases in residential consumption. And the whole state, you've got some summary statistics at the top here. But getting back to the affordability dial we were just talking about. So for this made-up utility, 5,000 gallons of water per month comes to almost 0.9% of the monthly household income. Of course, in this case, we've annualized it. This is the cost of a year of water at that rate. And so less than 1%, probably pretty affordable territory for most people. If we switch to the sewer bill, we see it's a little more expensive there in the sense of what people can afford, what they can pay. Water and sewer bill combined, obviously, is going to be a higher number, but still, in fairly green territory for a typical customer. Going back to just the water, we have the fees that Sheryl was discussing earlier, the water connection fee on the left here and the capital recovery fee on the right. Also for this made-up utility below the median for both of them. On the left, we have a map of all the rate structures that are being shown and where they're located in the state, the yellow dot being the one in particular that we're looking at, the made-up example. And there are also a variety of comparison groups you can consult. Similar number of water accounts. In that case, you're just looking at 11. Similar customer income, you're looking at 25 here, with between $30,000 and $34,999 a year of median household income, and so on, within 50 miles distance. So you can use those comparison groups if you find them helpful for how you are doing your analysis of your rates. In all of this, one thing that we have on some of our other dashboards that we don't have here would be a graphical representation of your cost recovery for your system. So, for example, an operating ratio that could be expressed as your operating revenues for your enterprise fund divided by your operating expenses, including depreciation. And we could imagine pretty easily, couldn't we, a scenario with a utility that had very low rates. Maybe they're like down in the yellow low territory here for residential water and or sewer, but they are not breaking even on covering their costs. So while that is not a feature in this dashboard, the reason I bring it up is because of the technical assistance that we can offer to small systems serving 10,000 or fewer people after this webinar in the coming weeks. Not only can you ask us to explain your rates like I'm about to do with a few utilities here based on what is on the dashboard, you could also, if you haven't already calculated it for yourselves, send us your annual financial report, your CAFR, and we can extract the relevant data there and calculate some ratios for you and send it back to you pretty easily and quickly. So I just wanted to make that offer as well. Now I know that we have several utilities that have already volunteered for us to show them up on the screen here. And I'm going to start with Hanover County Department of Public Utilities. Just scroll down to get to them here. Except they might not be in our dashboard. It doesn't seem that they are unless I missed my guess. Well, I'm sorry about that, but to the attendees from Hanover County, let me just say that you're still welcome to follow up with us, or we'll follow up with you offline to see how we might be able to help you out. But I know we had a volunteer also from Whiteville, I believe it is, town of Whiteville. And yes, they're in here. So, town of Whiteville, it's an interesting, to my way of thinking, example. The residential water bill is just slightly above the median, whereas the industrial water bill is in the lower the lower 25% of the data here. And this may represent a deliberate decision on the part of the utility to try and keep some of those industrial water rates low to help attract industry to town that may be water intensive in nature. For the affordability dial, we're seeing the residential water affordability right around 1%. So probably not that tough for most customers to pay most of the time. The residential sewer bill is on a percentage basis a little less expensive than the water bill. And for the water and sewer combined, it's interesting to note too that the system appears to not ask for a capital recovery fee, but rather roll everything up under the connection fee. And in our research in other states like Georgia, for example, we have seen those different philosophies that utilities adopt for those kinds of things. And it does seem that Whiteville has a bit lower MHI, a bit higher poverty rate than the Commonwealth of Virginia average. But again, without the cost recovery data, I don't see anything that immediately looks like a source of concern or alarm that just jumps out at you there. And I'm getting a note here that it's pronounced Whiteville, not Whiteville. So my apologies about that. Thank you for letting me know the correct way to pronounce that. And if you have any additional questions, please let us know and we can talk to you offline. We also have Washington County Service Authority who asked us to show them here. And for their water bill, another one slightly above the median. For the industrial water bill, slightly below. Again, affordability right around 1% of annual MHI there. Interesting that both the water connection and the capital recovery fees are in the middle, I believe this is middle 50%. Yes. I should have mentioned that earlier. For the fees here at the bottom, these orange areas, they're the top and bottom 25%. So looks like it's pointing right around about 1/3 of the way up from zero there on a percentage basis for both the water and the sewer connection fees. Excuse me, for both the water connection and capital recovery fees. For sewer, a little bit less expensive on a comparative basis for the residential water and for the fees. And we'll just do one comparison group here for these folks. Let's do like a similar number of accounts. Not a huge change in where the dials are pointing there. I'm going to pause at this point and ask Lexi if there have been any others that have come in, typed in to volunteer.
No, but we do have a question.
Okay, very good.
Since system size seems to affect the water wastewater bill, would it not be better to normalize the rates based on system size?
That is an interesting question. I don't know if at the time that question came in, if I had covered the comparison groups yet, where you can compare against the similar number of water accounts. For example, some of our other dashboards will do similar population, but it breaks out pretty similarly there. We don't do any kind of data normalization based on system size for all utilities so that we can present the whole data set to you on the dials, and then you can drill in to particular comparison groups of interest. So I hope that was a good answer to your question, but if not, if there's more you want to know about that, please let us know and we'll talk about that offline with you.
We do have a volunteer from Town of Orange.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Lexi. And I'll bring up Orange now. Here we go. Sort of in the central part of the state, I see. So the town of Orange, for the residential water rates, we're getting a lot of examples here who are close to the median, so a little bit below the middle of the data. And industrial water per million gallons pointing in a similar direction. Affordability, again, just a little bit below 1%. Interesting, this is a reverse of what we've seen with some of the other data where, assuming that we have complete data here, which I trust we do, that there is a capital recovery fee and not a water connection fee. So assuming we're not missing some data here, that may represent a philosophy there of fee setting that is opposed to the more common practice where we see both fees broken out. For the sewer bill, now that tells quite a different story. That's interesting. The rates for the residential sewer bill are, comparatively speaking, on the high side. In the top 35% of the data there. Dial hasn't really budged compared to water on the industrial sewer. And for the affordability index, it is getting up there towards 2%. The town of Orange is a town that is a good deal lower on the MHI scale than the Commonwealth of Virginia as a whole, and about twice the poverty rate. So could be a little tougher for a typical customer there to afford the sewer. And then the water and sewer combined, we see about 2.5% of annual income there. I am aware that sometimes those of you with your utilities and your rate setting decisions and all that goes into that will be raising rates to cover additional capital costs. So I don't know if the town of Orange is trying to build a new sewage treatment plant at the moment or pay. Ah, okay. You're covering that capital cost. That's understandable. So thanks for volunteering to let us show you the town of Orange. And I've actually picked out a couple of examples to tell particularly interesting kinds of stories here that I would like to put up unless, Lexi, there's any more questions right now. Of course, we don't have a lot of time left here, but let me see if I can bring up the Aden Service Authority. Not sure if they're on the call right now. And this is interesting to us from our research because we have here one of the lower end on the residential water, industrial water, lower third for both of them. On the affordability front, less than 0.5%. On the water connection fees in the bottom 25%, but a very substantial water capital recovery fee of $10,000. They're near the very top of that dial percentage-wise. And then sewer bill, you can see the dials really moved there from the water to the sewer for both the residential water and the industrial water, and getting up towards 1% on the MHI scale there. So this is a utility that is showing a bit of a different look for the affordability of water versus the affordability of sewer. And then on the combined basis, it's still less than 1.5% of annual income for a typical 5,000 gallons of water and sewer there. So hopefully the way the dashboard works is fairly clear to all on the call there, and welcome you to go in and use it any time that would be helpful to you. Again, please do let us know, and in fact we're going to be launching a poll question in a moment about how else we can help you after this webinar. So Lexi, unless there's any other questions that have come in, I'm going to turn it back over to you now for... Oh, that's right. Lexi's reminding me, because I'm a little forgetful sometimes, that actually I was going to show you one or two more slides, so sorry about that. see here. We've only got about 10 more minutes in the presentation. Now that you've seen the dashboard, I just wanted to remind you, for anyone who is interested, that we also have developed rates dashboards for the state of Colorado, Georgia, North Carolina, New Jersey, Texas. Arizona's coming soon, possibly even tomorrow. We might get it up on our website. The use of all of these dashboards is free and online and open to anyone to use. And we have resources that you may be interested in. Our blog here, which you're welcome to subscribe to, from our Environmental Finance Center. The Small Systems project that this is part of, you can go to their website and request under any of the 7 areas of the grant: energy management, water system loss, rates and finances, asset management, and so on, free assistance by filling out the request there. And our fellow EFC, the Boise State University Environmental Finance Center in Idaho, if you go to this link, they have a somewhat different kind of dashboard they call Hydro Dash. It will only show you one utility at a time, but allows you to put in your financial data and get some of those cost recovery measurements returned to you right then and there. All right, but now I really am turning it back over to Lexi for the last few minutes.
All right, and David is actually going to launch a few poll questions just to get a little bit more information from you as we wrap up the survey. So hopefully in just a few minutes or seconds you should be seeing the poll now. So if you are a small system who would like assistance from us, just click yes and we'll get back with you.
And like Lexi is saying, you know, this will be something where we can give you a phone call or send you some information by email, whatever works best. But we'll be glad to do that in the coming weeks here for anyone who volunteers. It's part of, covered under the EPA grant that funds our Smart Management for Small Water Systems project. I think we've got a good number of results in now, Lexi, so I'm going to close the poll. So we've got a fair number of people who have requested our assistance, I'm glad to say.
Great. And our next poll question is whether you'd like to be added to our listserv to get updates from our environmental finance blog, which we post to weekly. We try to just keep a limited number of posts, but they're related to all different kinds of environmental finance topics. And we won't share your email address with anyone outside of our own organization.
And we're still getting a few responses coming in, Lexi, so I'm going to leave that polling question up for a few more seconds. Okay, there we go. Yeah, quite a few people signed up for our blog. We're going to be thrilled to add you to that. And then, Lexi, I think we have one more polling question to launch here.
And our last polling question is if you'd like to stay in contact with Draper Aden Associates. Sheryl and Kathy are really great, and they'll add you to their email distribution list to get updates from Draper Aden Associates.
Yes, indeed. And we've got a number of people voting on that, which is great. Going to give that just a couple more seconds, and all right, we'll go ahead and close that polling question as well. And so for those people who said yes, for all of those things, we'll be adding you / getting back to you just as soon as we can in the coming days.
And finally, I am sending out to all of you via the chat, or you might see it in your questions box, a link to our Qualtrics survey that I mentioned earlier. And this, again, it's a very brief survey, and we'd really appreciate your feedback. It's going to help us improve on our webinars in the future. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for attending. It was a real pleasure to spend our afternoon with you. Please remember that you can contact Draper Aden Associates with questions on the survey, and you can contact either David or I at the UNC Environmental Finance Center with questions on the dashboard. And again, if you'd like free direct technical assistance at any point, just contact one of us, or you can go to the efcnetwork.org and fill out a request there. And for any of you who volunteered to have your dashboard shown, we didn't have time to get to you, or if you asked a question we didn't get to answer, we will be following up with you in the next few days. And if you don't have time to fill out that survey now, you will be getting an email tomorrow with another link to that survey. And again, we would appreciate you taking the time to do that. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, everyone.